We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Gimel and Aleph from Meseches Eruvin. This is Eruvin Daf 43a. The Mishnah had a machlokas tanoim. Again, when a person finds himself in a ship on Shabbos outside the Tchum, can you walk the entire Svina? Can you walk the entire ship? Or do you only get Dalet Amos? That was a machlokas tanoim. And there was a machlokas in the Gemara between Rabbah and Rabbi Zera of why those who permit you to walk the entire ship, why is it allowed? One opinion is you were within the mechitzos. You made your makam shvisa within the area of the mechitzos of the ship before Shabbos, so that becomes like your Dalet Amos, the entire ship. That was Rabbah's opinion. Rabbi Zera's opinion was, since the ship is moving, you're always being carried into a new Dalet Amos with every step you take, so you always get a new Dalet Amos, and therefore you can walk the entire ship. So the Gemara now is asking, why does Rabbi Zera not say like Rabbah? The answer is, lahavriach mayim asuyos. Rabbi Zera holds that the walls, the mechitzos of the ship, are really just made to keep the water out. And Rashi says, "V'lo chashivi mechitzos laso sfina kula ka'arba amos." They're not considered real mechitzos in order to make the boat, the entire boat, considered like arba amos. They're not regular mechitzos like you would have on land. The Rabbah my time lo amar ke Rabbi Zera. And why doesn't Rabbah agree with Rabbi Zera? Why doesn't he say that the reason is since the ship is moving, therefore you always have Dalet Amos? So the Gemara answers for that. B'mahaleches kuli alma lo pligi. The answer is that according to Rabbah, everybody would actually agree by Mehalaches. If the ship was moving, there would be no machlokas tanaim in the Mishnah. Everyone would say it's totally fine. Rashi says, Amar loch b'Mehalaches dikol amemer haytaima desvina not laso afilu Rabbi Akiva modi deshari. Even Rabbi Akiva in the Mishnah would admit that you can walk throughout the entire thing. So he agrees essentially with Rabbi Zera's logic. He just says everyone agrees. It wouldn't even be machlokas tanaim. Ki pligi b'sha'amda. The entire machlokas tanoim in the Mishnah is when the ship is standing still. There you have a machlokas whether or not the mechitzos are good enough that you can walk the entire svina, or you only get Dalet Amos. Gemara says, Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Masnisa nami deika tiv'mahaleches lo pligi. The Mishnah is meduyak. The Mishnah, you can infer from the Mishnah that the machlokas tanoim is not occurring when the svina is moving. How do you know that? Mimai midikatani ma'isa shabo miplandarasin v'hifliga svinasim bayom. The Mishnah had a story where they came from this particular place and they were far off the shore in the boat. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, halchu es kula. And the Mishnah said that Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah walked the entire ship. Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Akiva lo zazu me'arba amos. And it said in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Akiva would not move from their Dalet Amos, sherotzu lahachmir al atzmam, because they wanted to be strict on themselves. The implication of that line, they wanted to be strict, is that min hadin, according to the strict halacha, or according to the actual halacha, you could have been lenient, but they just wanted to be strict. So now he explains his inference. If you say that when the ship is moving, there was no argument, for sure it's permitted. Hainu dekatani ratzu, that's what it means that they were being strict. Dilma amdu, they were afraid that the ship might stop. In other words, the case in the Mishnah was the ship was moving, and Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Yoshua, really the ship was moving. They held it's no problem. They agreed in that case, as we just said, as Rabbah just said. Everybody agrees if the ship is moving, it's not a problem. Everyone agrees with Rabbi Zera, but they wanted to be strict out of the concern that maybe the ship would stop moving. But if you say that they argue in all scenarios, they argue whether the ship is moving or even if it's not moving, they argue in both cases, or I should say they argue whether it's not moving and even if it's moving, they argue. If that's the case, what do you mean they want it to be strict? It is forbidden regardless, according to them. They are outside of their tchum. You can only move 4 amos. That's not a chumrah. That's actually forbidden. So why does it say that they wanted to be strict on themselves? And the Gemara continues, Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, Masnisa nami deika. Our Mishnah implies as well that the machlokas between the Tanoim and the Mishnah is a situation where the Svina is standing still, and everybody agrees if it's mahaleches, everyone agrees it's not a problem. The Katani Svina dumya de dir vesar, because we have the machlokas by Svina similar to the machlokas by dir vesar, these enclosed areas. Ma dir vesar dikvi, just like the machlokas that occurs by dir vesar, those are fixed areas, those are not areas that are moving. Af svino nami dikviya. So too, the machlokas in the Mishnah with regards to a boat is talking about a boat that's standing still. That's where they argue. They argue whether the mechitzas are considered good or not. But if it was mahaleches, if it was moving, everyone would agree it's not a problem. Amar le Ravacha bred the Rava le Ravashi. Ravacha the son of Rava said to Ravashi, Hilchasa Rabbi Gamliel b'svina. The halacha when it comes to a svina, when it comes to a boat, is like Rabbi Gamliel that we're lenient. So the Gemara asks, Hilchasa mechlal de pligi. That statement implies, when you say the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel, it implies that the other Tanoim argue that they disagree. We don't know for sure they disagree. We're suggesting different opinions here, but it's possible that Ratzu lahachmir al atzman, they wanted to be strict. Maybe they didn't disagree, they just wanted to be machmir. Gemara says, no, it is true, it is indeed true they actually do argue. Vatanya, as we learned in a brisa, Chananya says, Koloso hayom yoshevu v'donu b'dvar halacha. The entire day they deliberated on the matter in this dvar halacha. Emesh hechriya achi abo halacha Rabbi Gamliel. And yesterday, the brother of my father determined the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel b'svina when it comes to a ship. Halacha Rabbi Akiva b'dir v'sar. And the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva in the issue of the enclosed areas. In that situation, we are going to be strict. Rashi over here says, Mechlal de pligi b'svina bitmia. The implication is there's an argument by a boat. That's a wonderment. V'haratzu katani. It says they wanted to be strict. U'menalu l'Rav Shmuel de pligi b'svina. Where's your source? How do you know that there's an argument by svina? And the Gemara says, in v'atanya b'nichusa u'pligi b'shamda. There's a brisa which says that they do argue. Where do they argue? They argue when the ship is standing still, as Rabbah says, and the case where they wanted to be strict is in the case where the ship is moving, like Rabbah said. There, everybody agrees really you can be lenient. They just wanted to be strict in case the ship would stop. And then the Rashi here explains, Rabbi Chananya ben Achi Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Chananya was the son of the brother of Rabbi Yoshua. Therefore, at the end, the statement is, Hichriya Achi Abba, the brother of my father, meaning Rabbi Yoshua, ended up concluding that the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel by Sfina. Now there's a parenthesis over here, although the Marshal takes it out, we'll take a look at it. Halacha Rabbi Gamliel b'sfina ke'ein sfinaso shahaisa mehaleches delo chayshina and l'shema amda. So the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel in the situation of a boat that is walking. We're not afraid that it's going to come to a stop. That's how this parenthesis is understanding. Umiyu afilu b'sha'amda polig Rabbi Gamliel. But Rabbi Gamliel himself would argue even in a situation where it's coming to a standstill. According to this understanding, the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel only where it's moving. But in a situation where it's standing still, even though Rabbi Gamliel still argues in that case, the halacha is not necessarily like that. Dumya de dir v'sar ve'ein halacha kemoso ela b'mahaleches. The halacha is only like Rabbi Gamliel when it's moving. Aval amda dahainu dir v'sar halacha Rabbi Akiva. But if it's standing still, like in the situation of a dir v'sar, there the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva. Again, that's taken out because the fact of the matter is that if you're going to say that Rabbi Gamliel, if you're going to say that Rabbi Gamliel argues by amda only, really the truth is they would all agree by mahalachas. It's hard to say the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel when the boat is moving. If everyone agrees with Rabbi Gamliel when the boat is moving, so that's why the Marshal doesn't like that girsa. But in any case, according to this particular way of learning, the halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel only by mahalachas and not when it's standing still. Koloso hayom shayu b'sfina. The whole day they were in the boat. They were deliberating this issue. Achi Abba Rabbi Yoshua. Again, the brother of his father was Rabbi Yoshua. And finally, Rashi says, Emesh lo erev. It means in the evening, meaning last night, yesterday night. That's when they concluded that the halacha was actually like Rabbi Gamliel. Gemara continues at the two dots. By Rav Chananya asks, Yesh tchumin lamala me'asara, oein tchumin lamala me'asara. Is there tchum above 10 tfachim from the ground, or are there no halachas of tchumin above 10 tfachim from the ground? The Gemara explains, Amud gavoa asara v'rachav arba. If you have a pillar that is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide, lo tibaylach, it's not even a question. Da'ara smichti, that's like regular ground. And if a person goes up onto that pillar, and let's say the pillar is partially within the tchum, partially outside of the tchum, of course he cannot walk outside of his tchum. Kiti baylach ba'amud gavoa asara ve'ino rachav arba. The question is, let's say you have a pillar that is 10 tefachim high, but it's not 4 tefachim wide. It's not something that is easy to step upon. There, in that situation, can you leave your tchum or not? Inami dekazal bekfitza, or let's say you're jumping up into the air. Rashi over here says you use the Shem Hashem. You somehow fly using the Shem Hashem. So again, you're above 10 tefachim from the ground. Is there a problem of tchum or not? Lishna Achrin, another version of the question was besfina mai. In a ship, is there any halachas of tchum in a ship? Because in a ship as well, the assumption is it's going in water that is more than 10 tefachim deep. It's more than 10 tefachim above the ground. So Amar Rav Hoshia says, Tashma will bring a proof, Maisa Shabomi Plandrasin, Bifligos Vinasim Bayam Vechulu. There's exactly a case of being in a ship where apparently there was halachas of tchum. Gemara says, Yamad Bishlama Yesh Tchumin. If you say that there is halachas of tchum above 10 tefachim from the ground, Mishum Hachi Ratzu, that's why they want it to be strict. Elo Yamad Ein Tchumin. But if you say there's no halachas of tchum at all, Amai Ratzu, why would they be strict at all? There's no reason to be strict if there's no halachas of tchum above 10 tefachim. So the Gemara says, Kedam Rav, it's like Rav explained in a different discussion, B'mahaleches Berakak, where it's going in a shallow area of the water. It's less than 10 tefachim deep, so it's not more than 10 tefachim above the ground. Hachanami B'mahaleches Berakak, you could say the same thing over here. Perhaps our Mishnah is talking about where it's not more than 10 tefachim above the ground, so it's not a proof to our question, one way or the other. The Gemara tries another proof from our Mishnah, Tashma, coming here. Pamachas lo nichnasu l'namalad shachashecha v'chulu. Again, there was a situation where they only entered to the port after Shabbos had begun, and there was a machlokas whether they could come down or not. If you say there is tchum, then it makes sense that there's a whole discussion. Here they came from outside the tchum on Shabbos. Are they allowed to walk off the ship or not? But if you say that there is no halachas of tchum above 10 tefachim from the ground, who cares if they were outside of the tchum when they were in the ship when Shabbos started? And the Gemara gives the same answer. Amar Rava says, the case in the Mishnah might be it's shallow water. Maybe they were never more than 10 tefachim above the ground, and that's why it's an issue. If the ship was outside of the tchum when Shabbos started, they're going to have an issue coming off of that ship. Gemara tries another proof. Tashma coming here. Hani shev shmaita di samron betzafra b'shabsa kame derav chista besura bahade panya b'shabsa kame derava b'pumadisa. There were seven rulings, 7 halachic rulings that were made in the morning of Shabbos in front of Rav Chisda and Surah, and then on Shabbos afternoon, the same rulings were brought before Rava or before Rabba. They changed the girsa before Rabba and Pumbedisa. So it means that there was someone doing a lot of traveling on Shabbos from Surah to Pumbedisa. How did they do such traveling outside of the Tchum? So Man Amrinu, who's the one that said these halachas? Lav Eliyahu Amrinu. Isn't it Eliyahu Hanavi who issued these rulings? And Alma, we see, Ein Tchumin Lamala Me'asara. Apparently there's no Tchum more than 10 Tvachim above the ground, and Eliyahu Hanavi flew from one location to the other. That is the situation over here. Gemara says, no, maybe not. Dilma Yosef Sheda Amrinu. Maybe it was Yosef the shade, Yosef the demon, who said these halachas, and he doesn't keep Shabbos, so there's no proof one way for the other. Maybe he really did violate the Yisur of Tchum. Gemara tries another proof. Tashma coming here. Hareini Nazir b'yom sheben David bo. Let's say a person says, I'm going to be a Nazir from the day that David HaMelech comes, meaning the son of David HaMelech, meaning from the day that Mashiach comes, that's when I'm going to be a Nazir. Mutter lishtos yayin b'shabbos uv'yomim tovim. It says that he's allowed to drink wine on Shabbos and Yontiv, and Rashi says, b'shabbos uv'yomim tovim devadai lo asi Mashiach ha'idna. Mashiach is certainly not coming on Shabbos and Yontiv, and we'll continue this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Gimel Amud Beis.